Gavon, and welcome, friends, to episode 9 of the Lord of the Wrongs podcast, the only Tolkien podcast the professor himself would dismiss as juvenile and crass. My name is Dan Zerby. I'm here with my co-host and good buddy Sean Kelly, and together we'll be discussing the writings, adaptation, news, games, anything else regarding J.R.R. Tolkien's Legendarium. And we'll be doing so in a way he would likely not quite approve of. Hi, Sean. How are you doing today? We're doing a little different episode today, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm good. I figured. I mean, I did say last episode that we should just do the Rings of Power sort of cover in order to, just kind of get it out of the way. I mean, I do want to discuss it with you, but I feel like it would be hard to do a sort of Tolkien-related podcast without at least talking about our thoughts and feelings on it. So we might as well just dedicate likely 2 episodes to it.
I don't think we'll have to go over into 3 episodes.
Yeah.
So we'll be discussing the first 4 episodes of the Rings of Power today.
I mean, I'm sure we'll, dip in and out of
a little
the
bit.
whole season.
We have to. We've already seen the full season, but for the sake of keeping this to a 2.5-hour episode, we're only doing the first, really focusing on the first 4 episodes today.
Yeah. Also, I guess we should mention there are going to be spoilers. I would think that anybody listening to this would probably have watched the show already, but obviously we're going to be talking about the whole thing. So if you haven't seen it yet, you might want to skip these episodes until you have.
Or if you're on the fence about whether or not you want to watch it, maybe listen to this podcast and then make a decision. But
yeah, well, I guess we can try to avoid.
We will tell you what's going to happen in it.
Yeah.
So.
Then again, Tolkien sort of already told you what was going to happen. So
it sure does. It's like, this story ends happily, and here's what happened. It's like, this has a melancholy ending, and here's what happened.
Yeah, and they actually had a little bit of that, but we'll get back to that.
We'll get into that in a second.
I figured we could kick this off by figuring out what the hell to call this episode.
Right. Yeah. My initial lazy thought for the title of this episode was just Wrongs of Power, because that's what this is the Lord of the Wrongs podcast. But you pointed out, and I agree with you, that it's a little negative.
Yeah, I don't really
our goal
want
is not to just bury this show and just completely crap on it the entire time. I don't think that makes for a very interesting podcast anyway. And I've listened to that podcast, and it's not that interesting. So
yeah, I mean, like, if you know enough about Tolkien and film and stuff, shows and all that, you probably know why, like, the things you don't like about it already, and things like that. But maybe we can fill in some gaps there, but also talk about the things they did right.
Because they did a few things pretty damn well.
Yeah.
But what else did you have for potential titles for this super large special that we're doing?
Yeah, so Tolkien did love his alliteration.
He sure did.
A lot of alliterative poems. Yeah, no, they're really, it's a
alliteration
form
the best.
I hadn't really appreciated until reading just reading Tolkien in general. He uses it all over the place.
I mean, it's almost constant. I mean, he's not writing exclusively in alliterative verse, but he's always using alliteration, which is great.
When he's describing things, any sort of like metaphor or just in his description of things, he often just strings together alliteration. So I figured you could go with the reliving Rings of Power post-production.
I mean, that one. It's solid. Yeah, I mean,
it's long.
There's nothing wrong with long.
Yeah, there's a lot to chew on in that one, but
it's a meaty title. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What else could we even? I'm sure there's some hidden pun in there, and I'm sure somebody, later on listening to it could let us know, like, oh, you missed this obvious one. But
Yeah. And if you do think of a really obvious, excellent, alliterative name for this episode, send us an email at lordofthewrongspodcast@gmail.com, and maybe we'll change it later after it gets put up. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll put
Or
it
if
in
you
the
email us in
correction.
time. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, we could change it by the second episode even. You're right.
Yeah, that's very true.
I did have another one.
Yeah, you've been teasing me with this, but you won't tell me what it is, and I'm very excited to hear it because you promised it was stupid.
All right,
I'm very excited to hear it.
Ready? The Rings of Chowder. So
that's so much dumber than I thought it was going to
be. Thank you. So like the soup. That show, The Soup, that they had, like the nerd culture, like
Joel, what's his name? Yeah,
Joel McHale. Yeah,
Joel McHale, I actually enjoyed that show, as dumb as TMZ is as a entity.
Yeah, but it was a little more. It was less like, what are these random celebrities doing, and more like, what's going on around nerdy stuff. But yeah. Anyway, so I figured it would be like, it would be like a chunky soup, like The Soup,
Yeah,
filled with chunks of information as well as this thick broth of nonsense.
It's perfect. I love it. I mean, I predicted that I would love it, and it's it's great.
Even dumber than you thought. The Rings of Chowder.
It's way dumber than I thought, and I like it so much more than I possibly thought I could.
I also think it's a good title for this episode because somebody's going to look at that and be like, what the hell? Are they going to talk about soup?
All right, welcome to our special on chowders. We're going to talk clam, corn.
Others. I hate chowder personally.
We might have a few bisques make an appearance even. We'll see.
See, I don't even like soup. I particularly dislike chowder because I don't like how
you are
creamy
the worst
it
Irish
is.
person.
Yeah, I don't like mashed potatoes. I don't like soup.
Oh man.
Yeah. I
if you were in the old country, you would starve.
Yeah. No, I'm sure I'd learn to just eat potatoes, but yeah. So we're not talking about soup. We're talking about Rings of Power.
Yes,
clearly, as you could tell by the episode title.
Now we have to make the title actually. Rings of Chowder.
Yeah. If somebody comes up with something better, I will gladly. Because it is stupid. It's stupid, full stop. So let's get into it. And
let's get started.
I just wanted to prepare for this episode. We both watched the first 4 episodes of
rewatched the show.
Rewatched them, yeah. And and I was taking some notes whenever something came up that I wanted to touch on, and immediately within about 15 seconds of the show starting, I had my first note, which is that elf children are mean.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. I mean, we're not going to go through every single thing that happens in the first 4 episodes, but yeah, starting off, you see all these elf children playing and
sinking, like throwing rocks at Galadriel's ship, which
might her little paper boat, and
could be a reference.
Like, I mean, I'm imagining it's one of Feanor's sons.
Oh,
right, like that would track.
Yeah, because
it's not like destroying boats is not in their character in the Feanor family.
Yeah, and I guess as children, I can see how they would just be little jerks.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of children are jerks because they haven't learned to be people.
Yeah, and elves learn to be, super people. I mean, Feanor is like the only outright jerk we see as like an adult elf. But
I mean, there's the elf that betrays the location of.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I meant like the high elves, and say he was like a dark or gray elf.
I think he was one of the. Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's fair.
The ones who didn't see the light of Amon. We can once again here we go with our whatever this. Let's table that.
Yeah,
We could do an episode on the different kinds of
the
elves.
Silmarils need a whole episode themselves. Feanor needs an episode by himself. The different types of elves need an episode by themselves.
Yeah, I think
and eventually we will come up with a shorthand for it, but that's for another episode.
Yeah, once again, email us so we don't have to do the work on coming up with that stuff.
Yeah, remember that's Lord of the Wrongs podcast at gmail.com.
But I think, like, the reason I mentioned that, I guess, is because the first 5-10 minutes of the first episode, whatever it was, the whole sort of recap flashback of the first age was maybe the most interesting, and I mean, just the thing that it required. It was just so much information and stuff that you could do like a
just
moment
visually
by moment.
though.
Yeah.
I mean, like between the shots of the trees and just like, visually, there's so much going on to pay attention to, and that's one of the things I'll say. Just rewatching the first few episodes of this, that just catching some of the things that I missed the first go around. Like it never occurred to me connect like, oh, the little elf, the young elf that throws the rock and sinks Galadriel's paper boat. Like, is that a reference to to the kinslaying and the burning of the ships and everything? It's like, so I mean, it could be. It may have meant to have been that one. There's a lot of Easter eggs like that.
Yeah,
if that is an Easter egg.
A quick, I guess, summary of that story to explain the reference. Feanor wanted to get the Silmarils back, and so he would do anything. And so he led a bunch of the Noldor who were. He led a group of elves basically back to Middle Earth, and in order to get there, he went to this island of sea elves and stole their ships and killed a bunch of them.
In the first kinslaying,
it was like maybe the ultimate sin of the elves. Beyond anything else.
Yeah, like it was the closest the elves ever really came to civil war. And it really wasn't so much of that as much as it was just kind of a slaughter.
Just a robbery.
It was a home invasion where they murdered the people at home and took all their stuff.
And then he took them to Middle Earth and then burned their ships afterwards, just because he just really wanted to be irredeemable. So that was
that was really adding quite a huge insult to injury, because as you might imagine, the sea elves really valued and loved their ships, like almost like children. So
they loved them.
It was a big deal that he did that,
as much as Feanor loved the Silmarils that he created, because they were like their ultimate creation. But they weren't, they weren't about to kill over them. So that's what we've referenced that a couple times, and so once
we'll
again,
get more into that at some point in the future. And if you don't want to wait, you can always just read the Silmarillion. Good luck.
The thing that bothered me as well about the elves early on was like Finrod's gray morals.
Yeah, the idea. Well, I guess we don't find out in the first episode. I think we don't find out until the last episode of the season, right? That
second to last episode, something. Yeah, he whispers something to her.
Yeah, right. He's talking about the stars, and Galadriel asks him, well, what about the reflection of the stars in the water? How do I know which way is up? And he whispers to her, and we don't know what happens in the first episode, but we do eventually find out, that you cannot know until you've touched the darkness, which is
just very against Tolkien's whole point about good and evil.
Yeah, I mean, Tolkien's worldview with evil and good, it's very Catholic, and it's the idea that evil is not a thing in and of itself, just like darkness is not. It's just the absence of good or the absence of light. So the idea that you can touch darkness and evil is not really, it's nothingness, so it's not something that you can grab onto.
Yeah, like he basically
it didn't really make sense.
To me, it seems more like Tolkien was like, the right thing to do. Like everybody knows the right thing to do, basically. Right. But you just, if you're doing the wrong thing, it's because you've corrupted your goodness, and you lack that. So like if you're
right,
if you're like an elf, like you don't need to, experience evil in order to do the right thing. You should just know.
Yeah, I mean Tolkien's worldview is that of eternal is not eternal morality, or just like this inherent like
Um,
thing that
what is it called? Absolute or
I'm totally blanking on the right
it's sort of like
terminology here.
the forms in Plato where morality just sort of exists outside of
right. Yeah, like there are eternal truths.
Decision.
Yeah, there are eternal truths, and everybody knows them in their heart, and whether they follow those truths or not is whether or not they're how
it's
good
a decision.
they are.
Yeah. But so that was the thing that kind of like, well, all right, let's get into the positivity for that first section.
I was gonna say
first,
I
guess
the first section I have something positive, and I have something that I didn't quite care for. The show starts with a quote from Tolkien from the writings, which I actually liked. Like nothing is evil in the beginning is an actual thing.
Oh yeah.
And I like that. It's true because I don't remember,
except for those children.
Well, again,
it was talking about the world, right?
Yeah. Well,
and other things, I suppose.
Yeah, well, like the idea that Sauron was not evil in the beginning, that not even Melkor was evil in the beginning, exactly. But he was just a terrible, terrible guy.
Yeah,
but he certainly didn't think of himself as evil. It wasn't. He was just trying to do his own thing, and his own thing was wrong. But it's the idea that he wasn't necessarily like, I don't think anybody that you would consider evil would think of themselves as evil. They think they're doing the right thing for their,
yeah.
It's very, except for Morgoth.
Yeah, once it,
at a certain point,
I guess once you reach
a
certain point, it's like,
yeah,
it is nice to see Tolkien's writings quoted in the show because it does, the showrunners did have a passion for his work, and
not sure the whole writing staff have a passion for his work, but I think it's fair to say the showrunners do.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell from interviews and things like that they were trying their best to include everybody.
And
and including executives. Which makes it a little hard to walk that line. But I mean, another good thing in the intro was the two trees and just all of the visuals.
I was about to say that. It was just beautiful. I mean, every time I see that shot, I get chills. I really do. Like, I'm like, I know we've talked about this before, but yeah, it is one of my favorite moments of the show. Is that very first episode where you get that just beautiful shot of the trees, and then the light goes out. I thought that was really cool, even though that's not how it happened.
Yeah, not exactly, but I did look up the city there is Valmar, which is where the Valar live, which is probably what I should have named the cul-de-sac in that that episode.
Oh yeah.
But just in general, all of those sweeping establishing shots of like any of the elven cities or anything really were just just so really visually breathtaking.
Yeah, and really, really impactful. I mean, Casa Doom was another one that I just got chills and got emotional because the only depiction we've seen of that in film has been
a ruin
in Lord of the Rings, and it's destroyed. I mean, it's taken over by these slimy orcs and that goddamn Balrog.
Yeah, that damn Durin's Bane.
Yeah,
but I mean, Eregion, I don't think probably would have been at that height at that point. Like I feel like I remember Eregion sort of not really being much of a thing until they started cooperating with the dwarves. But
yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, it's difficult with the time compression because they want basically everything that happens in the Second Age to happen at the very end of the Second Age.
And
the time compression makes it a little difficult when you're trying to remember exactly the order of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like the time compression is one of those things where I'm like, I'm not wholly against it or for it. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, it changes things up, and it does.
Yeah.
Obviously, it creates,
It creates
sort of,
problems, certainly.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I get it also that it's, it's nice to have everything included.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. I think a time compression, when Tolkien wrote about adaptation and some of the things that you need to look at, like the core of the original, and, was this change inevitable due to the change of medium? And I think the time compression is something that was kind of unavoidable, unless they wanted to just like, I think it would have been really muddy and confusing if they hadn't compressed the timeline. I think that is an
Yeah.
inevitable change
I mean,
for
you would
the
have
medium.
gone through multiple
Yeah.
character, like you couldn't tell the whole story of, say,
Yeah.
Numenor or something
Yeah,
if
I
you
mean,
were
if
going through generations.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, you could, but it wouldn't be as compelling.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't even meet Elendil until like the second half of the last season. Like if they
Yeah,
kept, if they didn't compress the timeline.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think that was an inevitable change. So I don't have a problem with it in general, but yeah,
Inherently, yeah, but like, yeah, it
yeah,
just depends. I mean, I think our general consensus here is we're just gonna have to wait to see how season 2 is, because
yeah. A lot of the issues that have been taken with this, it's like, well, they wrote themselves into a hole here, but like they could make it work later.
yeah,
Um, I will say for one of the early on things that I didn't like, I'm gonna say this, and I almost wasn't gonna bring this up, but to me it was very jarring to see, even though I expected it. And while I think people in general have made way too much about this. Finrod's haircut in particular, I will say it doesn't bother
uh,
me that elves have short hair. That part doesn't bother me exactly. But Finrod's haircut in particular is a very modern haircut. I don't care that it's short, but the modernness of it, to me, it kind of took me out of it.
yeah. I see.
You know,
So
again,
the
short hair
thing,
is fine, but a very modern haircut, it was jarring to see, honestly.
yeah,
It's like
I think,
he had the hair of a hipster, and that part
yeah, he did.
where like Elrond's hair is short, but like that works to me. Like that looks like a reasonable short haircut in like a
Yeah,
medieval, setting.
because Tolkien's sort of vision for this stuff, I mean, it was pulled from different time periods, his inspiration for a lot of these cultures and things like that.
Yes,
But
yes,
generally, it was like Dark Ages slash early medieval, I think, is like
yeah,
the time frame we're looking at. I mean, there wasn't, I mean, the
yeah,
most
pre-Roman.
armor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like pre-Roman England is like the kind of thing you're going
yeah.
for
The
here,
most armor anybody was wearing was chainmail. Um,
and boiled
every
leather.
Yeah, everybody was running around with tunics on, and
Yeah,
so like, uh, I liked, and that's one of those changes that doesn't really like affect the story for, say, the Jackson
right.
movies.
Yeah,
And I liked a lot of the. I mean, I'll just say I liked pretty much everybody's cultural sort of like visual identity in the show. Like the dwarves
yeah, I agree.
felt
Me too.
on point,
Oh
with
man,
the masks and everything. Yeah.
yeah, I loved that. By the way,
It was,
a little
yeah.
sidebar on that. So when you see Durin's children and they have those giant heads on, they did that specifically so that you didn't see the children's faces, so that they could work around like the fact that kids can only work like 3 hours at a time
Oh, I
during the
think
day or
that
something
was
like that, based on
it
the
just
labor laws. So that's
it's
why
such
they did
can't
that,
change
so they could
about
just have a
kids.
workaround, so they could have any kid, basically. Yeah, I was like, that's actually really
Yeah.
clever. I really like that because it worked in the scene,
And like, yeah,
and it didn't even
who
occur to me that that
cares?
would have been
Who cares
a
what the
practical
kids
choice.
his kids look like? I guess they were still funny.
I mean, yeah, it's not really relevant now at this point, at
No,
least.
that's
So,
interesting. But anyway, the orcs, I loved their
the
design was
design of
awesome.
the
They're
orcs, yes,
terrifying.
dude, they're scary. And what I loved, especially in the scene where Bronwyn and Theo are in the house and the orc is there and they have to kill it, like it felt dangerous. Like watching Lord of the Rings, the Peter Jackson movies, and The Hobbit, even most of the orcs are like bumbling idiots, and they just like are
and they're
super
also
easy
not
to kill.
fighting. They're fighting like pretty much every time you see them fighting, they're fighting like the greatest heroes.
The greatest fighters in Middle Earth. Yeah, Legolas and Aemir and
So
Gimli and Aragorn and all these like incredible
gives
fighters.
stakes, which was nice to see.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, they're just freaking scary. I really love the design of the orcs for the show. I think they're really cool looking.
One that was a little weird was what's his face? The elf. I'm blanking on his name. Arondir's armor.
Oh, I
was like weird with the face.
Oh, with the tree face. Yeah, it was a little weird.
I
didn't hate it, but I also didn't. I was like, I just feel like it's not quite.
Yeah, it just felt out of place.
You know, it's like I don't think it was wrong, but it wasn't quite right.
But
yeah. I mean, maybe it was just because it was so visually different from what we've seen in the Peter Jackson movies, and that has had such a. I've tried to really like not let go of that imagery in my mind, but it's very difficult because it was so impactful.
Yeah, the Numenorians' armor is just awesome, and I like that they're using scale, which
I love that. It just their whole thing
and it's it feels like it's a precursor to Gondor and their sort of visuals in the movie.
Yeah, I remember seeing a meme that was making fun of the Numenorian armor, and it was a picture of Sean Bean as Boromir in the flashback, where he's got like his full plate armor on, and then it was a picture of Elendil on the ship with his it looks like it's just like kind of a brass or a bronze just chest and back plate, and they were making fun of that. It was like, oh, it was $1 billion thing. I'm like, he's a seaman, so he's not going to wear full mail. They're not going to battle or war or anything like that. Like, it's just practical to have light armor that you don't need a ton of it. Like, that's ridiculous.
The other thing, they're inspired by like Phoenicians and Egyptians sort of culture. The Numenorians were Tolkien said that. And
it was definitely like a Mediterranean inspired
kind of like Ptolemaic for sure. Egyptians and stuff. I believe they would have had scale mail at the time. So it does line up for me. And I thought they also like they sort of have those trappings that make you start to think like, oh, they're becoming a little too I don't know, big for their britches, I guess. they're starting to, because the Numenor becomes quite nationalistic and all that before the fall.
It becomes kind of a fascist nation,
seeing them start to lean towards like the glory of Numenor just keep falling into that trap more and more is like, it's an interesting thing to look out for, I guess, as the show goes on.
Oh, I just want to go back real quick to something that Finrod said at the beginning that I don't want to focus on just being negative, but there was something that I think has an impact on the rest of the story in this show, which is Finrod saying to Galadriel that he won't always be there while they're in Valinor.
Yeah, they literally just said we didn't know what death was. We didn't have a word for it. And he's like, I won't always be here. The only thing I could say,
it's like
to support that or defend it, I guess, is he might have had some sort of premonition, because elves are known to have foresight.
They do have some elves have foresight. Elrond very famously has the gift of foresight.
No,
not all of them, but the most powerful.
And Finrod was a powerful elf for sure.
Oh yeah. He was.
By the way,
he would have had that.
Sorry, we've been saying his name. Yeah. Finrod is Galadriel's brother. They don't say it in the show because they're not allowed to.
Yes.
Yes,
later
they ended up getting the rights. I forgot.
In the show. And in the subtitles and in the X-ray thing that Amazon has, it says Finrod. But they did have to ask permission from the estate to use that because his name is like Finrod as Galadriel's brother is not in Lord of the Rings, so they needed permission from the state to actually.
Because they only have the rights to the appendices of Lord of the Rings. Yeah, and Lord of the Rings, but
And The Hobbit, but that's not really much help if you're
I
trying to do
didn't
a
even know
secondary story.
that. Yeah, I mean, it's almost completely irrelevant.
Yeah, well, I'm if my understanding is correct, they kind of bundled Lord of the Rings with its appendices and The Hobbit together when Tolkien originally sold the film rights.
Okay.
That was how it worked, and then it got split up between film and TV. Like I think was it film and video games or
I don't remember.
TV and video games. Either way, I'm not sure.
Well, anyway,
yeah, it's so muddy and not important really right now. So
I do see what you mean though. Him saying I'm not always going to be here did feel like a really weird. It's like you live effectively forever and you're in the undying lands.
Yeah, in the undying lands. Yeah. It's like even if you go to Middle Earth and get killed, which is what happens, he still would get rehoused. He would get sent to his Fea.
Yes,
right?
his
the word
Fea
for
is his soul and his Roa is his body.
Yeah, is his body. So yeah, his Fea would go to the halls of Mandos, get judged, and he would certainly be rehoused, and he would be there in Valinor, which is
just a weird,
something that's very weird. Like, yeah, you don't, you like he
literally will be here. He will be here forever, meaning on Earth.
Yeah, for as long as Earth exists. Yeah, he'll be there. Yeah. That's the whole thing.
But
so I guess we could
transition to Galadriel at that point.
Yes. So we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, and then we told each other to shut up and save it for the podcast.
Yeah, we can't talk about this casually anymore.
Yeah, I know. It's like, no, we can't talk about it. We have to save it for recording. But you were mentioning that you had not loved what aspect of Galadriel's story did you really not care for as much?
I felt like her. All right, so I like the character. I think she was played wonderfully. I think basically all of the actors pretty much nailed the parts that were written for them.
I absolutely agree. And Mordeth Clark, she is a remarkable actor. She really is fantastic.
And I like her as the fiery sort of younger, less wise, more irrational version of Galadriel.
Yeah, which does track with the writings. The warrior aspect, not as much.
But I'm fine with that too.
But yeah, being spirited and ambitious and all that. And it's
I think she's a little. To me, she's a little too driven by like revenge and stuff like that. It's a little too obsessed.
Yeah, I think the idea. I think what they were going for was just like make sure she had motivation, but I'm not sure it works exactly because the elves don't need motivation to be against
I think
Sauron.
I guess it explains the motivation.
Like the very fact that he's
explains the motivation to keep looking for him, I guess, because nobody else believes he's there. But,
I guess
it still feels contrived.
Yeah, it doesn't feel that organic to the Galadriel we know, I guess. But
I guess overall with the story, my problem is the contrivance. It feels like a lot of her being involved in these other stories and like doing all that stuff, like jumping off the ship to Valinor when when apparently Gil-galad has the ability to just send people over.
Yeah, I have quite a few notes on that of things I did not care for. Yeah, the idea that Gil-galad has the authority to send any elf to Valinor is
I mean, we'll
crazy.
touch on.
It's like where would you even get that idea from?
In a bit, because that was one of my biggest disappointments. But
and that was a lot of people's big disappointments. I feel
so with the Galadriel story, it just felt like it was all like the whole thing with Halbrand and everything finding her on the boat, and it just all felt.
I know they had to go so out of their way to create this big mystery about who Sauron is, to the point where they needed Galadriel to jump off of a ship and swim back to Middle Earth from Valinor, and then happened to come across a shipwreck that Sauron happened to be on, that happened to blah 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 blah. You know.
I think now that I'm thinking about it, one of my big issues with that is that would be reasonable, right? If it was contrived by Eru, because we know he has his hand in a lot of things that happen. Anytime you're really hearing about luck and stuff in The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, it's because Eru is sort of playing his hand and sort of nudging things in the right direction. But why would he?
Yeah, definitely.
Why would he stick? Like, why would he send Sauron to Numenor to like basically eventually destroy it? You know?
Yeah, it just doesn't.
So like those sort
sense.
of Deus Ex Machina moments actually make sense in lore in Tolkien's world, but not if not for evil. Like he wouldn't. And I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like Morgoth has the power in the void to do anything like that. Even if he was in Middle Earth, he couldn't make that happen.
And Eru,
they just don't have that
Eru,
power.
I think, from what I understand, unlike God in Christianity, he doesn't try to tempt people and like test them.
Well, yeah, I mean the Old Testament God Old Testament God definitely does
like think
test
about
people.
Abraham or something.
I mean Satan does do the
like
tempting. Yeah, but he does. You're right. He does test.
Yeah,
he does test Abraham. It's like kill your son. Okay, never mind. You're not into it.
I mean,
oh, good. I really didn't want to, but
yes, that classic story that makes sense. But he, Eru doesn't. I mean, obviously, maybe God isn't doing the tempting himself or whatever, but he does set those situations up. Eru doesn't. I mean, people are tested. But it's for a good purpose.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Bilbo found the ring and he was tempted and tested and he sort of passed, but that's because he wanted the ring to eventually be destroyed, right? Presumably we can't know his will, capital H.
Right. But that's the reason that
so like
it all happened is because Eru decided that that's how it should happen. He's God.
So like why? I mean, what? Nothing good comes of Galadriel going there.
Yeah.
Nothing, or like Sauron ending up going there and basically destroying Numenor. Like, I don't know. It's. I guess that's all I'll say on the matter. But just that.
Yeah. Again, I think. Yeah, my view on it was like they just really had to go out of their way to create. By the way, this is a big spoiler if you haven't heard the show. We just talked about it without really just saying it. Yeah, Halbrand is Sauron. That's revealed.
Yeah,
in the last
we said
episode.
we're going to spoil things in this episode. There's no way we're going to get around that. It's
but the whole mystery box thing that they did so much with in this first season, which to me really I think distracted from what the show should have really been. Yeah, they just had to go out of their way to create all this mystery and like, ooh, who is Sauron? Is it this guy? Is it this guy? Is it this lady? Is it whoever? And I found it was really just it ended up being distracting and made it a little less fun.
And against Tolkien's sort of style.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Like we've said a million times, like Tolkien, he'll tell you right away before the story starts that like how it ends. It's not an uncommon thing for him. So the idea of who is it? That mystery doesn't jive. But like I understand if they'd done it to an extent, it would have been fine. But they really went out of their way, and the whole mystery box thing, while it has its place, I found in this instance.
It's also like they're also I think one of the issues with it. So in Lost or just any show really, it works because Lost it didn't exactly work because they never answered all the mysteries, but
well, yeah, they opened too many mystery boxes.
Like, I think the problem is they were playing on our knowledge of the story, right? And they were changing it.
Yeah, they're trying to make it interesting for people who knew the background material.
I think people who knew the background material,
but it made it frustrating for me.
Just like to see it happen. Like I don't need to be fooled, but like I know what's going to happen at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and
Right. I mean, we all saw Lord of the Rings. The beginning tells you how this show ends. Like, it's not.
So like,
it's like we all know what happens.
The thing with Tolkien is enjoying the journey of getting there. I mean, the good guys are going to win.
Exactly.
You don't like in this one. Honestly, the good guys lose at the end for a while.
Kind of, yeah, and that's okay.
There are some triumphs.
Yeah, for me, the mystery box has its place, right? Like there are ways it can be used to be really engaging. However, in this situation and in many situations, I don't want to pick out just on Rings of Power. They're not the only show that's gone overboard with the idea. I find it to be often a kind of lazy way of getting audience engagement, like to try to get the audience engaged and to have like conversation about it.
Yeah,
it feels a little bit.
Yeah, it's
like a lazy way of doing it.
Yeah,
I have to say.
So let's turn things around and get positive again. I while we're on the topic of elves, we'll get to back down with Gil-galad later, but
we have some complaints
related stuff. But Elrond and Durin's storyline is one of my favorites. Their dynamic is awesome.
Yeah. Robert Aramayo and Owain Arthur, like their chemistry
palpable.
Is phenomenal. I mean, it is. It's just great. Like I 100% buy that. Like these two are friends. And the beginning when like that elevator ride where Durin's was like really emotional. Talking about it's like it's been 20 years. That might be nothing to you, but to me, that's a lifetime. And it's just like, it hit me so hard. And it really illustrates that whole like difference between mortals and immortals in Middle Earth and how those relationships could be fraught. It's just one of those things that, I loved it. I'm with you. I think their whole relationship is awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I hope
they
touch on they have to be getting more into the topic because I think that's one of the huge themes of the Second Age is immortality versus mortality.
Yeah, it is such a huge theme. Yeah, particularly in the Numenor storyline, which we haven't seen really any of, like the resentment of the Numenorians that is something don't live forever.
Make a note on is that they
like hinted towards it in an off way.
I said, the issues I had with Numenor is their unrest felt shoehorned in, and it's less about eternal life and more about like immigration struggle.
Yeah, they made it a very a jobs thing. It's like, they took our jobs.
What place did elves ever take their jobs? Like they're threatening.
No, that's not a.
Why would they be afraid of that and not like? Yeah, I don't know. They're just. I mean, I get that they're trying to make it like something that. I get that they're trying to make it something that like could be related to the and that would inspire the masses to be resentful. But like, why? I mean,
that economic fear that is used today doesn't quite jive
this, like,
in the same
utopia
way.
Society. And like, why would you not just resent somebody being eternal anyway? Like when you're gonna die, like it feels like a natural.
You're gonna die. It's like, why did they get to live? Why do I have to die? That's scary. It's like that's all you need. Like that alone. But anyway, works.
Back to Elrond, Durin, and Moria. That was, I think, my favorite storyline.
I think I'm with you on that.
And it was not one I had anticipated.
No, I think everybody was caught off guard and surprised by how compelling the dwarves are in this show. I feel like they're the runaway stars.
I think there weren't as many expectations. I mean, everybody. So I guess it almost felt like all of my expectations were flipped as far as the quality of the story, because I was the most excited for Numenor. I was also excited to see the High Elves, Gil-galad and all of them. I was like, all right, I mean, seeing Khazad-dûm, alive and well will be cool. I'm interested to see that. And then I was like, I have no expectations really about the Hobbit storyline. Like, what are they even doing here? And I didn't even understand what the hell was going on with the Mordor people, the Southlands.
Yeah, the Southlands.
I mean, that's all of them, right? But
yeah, I think that's all the
most
storylines.
of my I mean, I still like the Numenor storyline, but I was like super excited for it, and it's just been kind of like it's there are some parts I like, some parts I don't.
Yeah, it's falling a little bit short of
The
expectation for sure. In terms
the
of
elves
the story,
themselves
yeah.
just disappointed me pretty greatly. It like Gil-galad
Yeah, I
being
know
like
what you mean.
manipulative and cruel and just like power hungry and stuff.
Yeah,
Petty,
and
yeah. It just
petty, like the pettiness of Gil-galad is really. Well, do we just want to talk about Gil-galad now and get it out of the way because we keep referencing it? Yeah,
he's
yeah.
just Gil-galad is supposed to be the best of the elves. That's why he's king.
Yeah, that's why he's the High King. It's not because of his like lineage
I mean,
alone or anything like that. It's
yeah,
because he's so great.
elven kings
You
and
know?
stuff. They're almost it's almost a meritocracy because you're not from some long-standing
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
He probably his dad was probably one of the first elves or something, and then it's him. Like it's not like you have a
right.
long
Yeah,
line of kings. You've probably been alive for 10,000 years. The kingship is not changing hands
right.
constantly, so
Yeah.
these
Right.
people
Yeah.
are the best that the elves have to offer. Galadriel was queen because
Yeah.
she's a high
Yeah.
elf.
Yeah, and she created her
Yeah.
own like kingdom
Same
too.
with
In
Thranduil
Lorien, yeah,
was king
Lothlorien.
because he was also a high elf among the Sylvan elves, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, right. He was a high elf, and the Sylvan elves were his subjects. Yeah, that's how he
So
became king of
they're like
Mirkwood
yeah,
or
they're
Greenwood
like
at the
the
time.
best of their people have to offer. And so seeing Gil-galad as this like just petty
Yeah,
king. Yeah, he's
yeah.
I mean he's just been a yeah,
like
he's
kind of a
like
dick.
I just I don't think the elves need that much governing. So why is there that much politicking?
Right. Yeah. And I will say, I think Benjamin Walker, by the way, does an excellent performance as Gil-galad for the
Yeah, but
Gil-galad that's written. He's a good actor. He's one of the few Americans on the cast, and he's got like a Southern accent, which really freaked me out when I
yeah,
saw
no,
it
I
in the
mean
interview.
he's nailing it.
So
Yeah.
great actor. Yeah, he's like a Texan or something. I think he's like, yeah, y'all, I'm just Gil-galad.
Oh, that's so wrong.
It was wonderful. I was like, oh wow,
Yeah.
this guy is good. Okay,
But
cool.
he can only play what is written for him, and
Right. Yeah. So we mentioned like the lunacy of him having the authority to send elves to Valinor. I also didn't care for like that Elrond and Galadriel's place in his court. Like Elrond's father is Eärendil. His father is a star and his mother is a bird. I mean, he is a big deal. So the idea that he's like he's not that he's not permitted to, like, that's one of the first things we see with Elrond, that he's not invited to a council meeting.
He was his right hand. He was his herald. He was his right hand man. Elrond had the second highest. I mean, he became effectively king of his own kingdom afterwards. He wasn't a king, but
he founds Imladris. Yeah, he's the master of his own land. And,
afterwards, it just everything about that storyline, just directly involving him, has just sort of been a disappointment to me. But like, I get kind of why they did it. They were kind of introducing another antagonist, creating drama.
Yeah, they're creating drama. Yeah, I mean, they're creating drama, and obviously, like, we know what Gil-galad eventually will be doing at the end of the series. He'll be, laying his life down to destroy Sauron. So like, he's a good guy. So there's plenty of time for them to write an arc for him. But it does seem like they're starting off in a really different place.
Most elves don't really have an arc though, because they've just been, how much are you going to change in?
Well, they do though.
I mean, some of them do, but like,
that's why the time compression is a bit of a problem. That's one of the ways the time compression is a problem, because an elf would have an arc. I mean, Galadriel did start off as very impulsive and angry even, and then she eventually becomes this very ethereal, wise being. But she didn't start off that way. Like they still learn as they go along. It's not like elves like just have everything, all knowledge or anything like that. You know, there's always room for them to grow as individuals. But it's the compressed timeline does make that, because it would happen over hundreds and
it
doesn't
help certainly, but it just
so it's a tough place to start.
I think they could have easily just backed him off a little. Like you don't need to, you know. I think this is later, but the whole corruption of the Malorn and just all that weird stuff. Like, we'll I guess get into that in the second episode of this, but like.
Well, we do see I think in episode 4, like the black rot on the leaf of the tree. It's starting.
It just didn't. He could have easily we could have followed Elrond's storyline, could have followed Galadriel's, and just sort of checked in with the elves. But it doesn't need to be its own.
Yeah,
like it feels like bloating.
I mean, I think they could have. Yeah, I feel you. I feel like if they had just made Gil-galad like very aloof, that would have worked a little bit better and accomplished a similar thing without straying so far from the character people were expecting.
So, I mean, that kind of covers like, I mean, Gil-galad and my disappointment with that storyline directly. But I mean, I still liked Galadriel's story, and I love Elrond's story. So the elves are, still moving and shaking. But...
Yeah, I do hope they write themselves out of the little bit of a elf hole that they've dug for themselves in this first season.
Get back to some more positivity with the Harfoots, which was a very pleasant surprise, I thought.
I really love the Harfoots. Some people really don't care for them. I've enjoyed their storyline. I especially I love Sadok's book. I think that is so cool. It's all pictographs, but it has all this like information.
It's such
I think that was so cool. Like, the hunters come and then the wolves come. I think that is really cool. I really like that detail. Yeah, they have maps of the stars and everything so they can travel. I think they're doing a lot. There's a lot about that.
It feels like they're fleshing out the culture of the Harfoots in a way that is harmonious with Tolkien's sort of ideas for early sort of proto-hobbits. Nori and Poppy are just both
I know their relationship
really charming,
is wonderful. I love that
whole storyline is just, like I said, a pleasant surprise. The stranger I like and I don't like in some ways.
Agreed.
Obviously they're playing into the mystery box thing once again, but it does give. I think that is something where that feels sort of like the Galadriel Halbrand thing, but it feels like it actually makes more sense and it works better in my book, where it's
even though it doesn't really work with the writings, but I think it does work for the show. I think I think they needed the stranger to be revealed. Sorry guys, another spoiler. He's revealed as an Istar or a wizard. We don't know for sure which one, but they heavily make it seem like it's going to be Gandalf with the gray raiment, and at the end of the last episode he's like, just follow your nose.
So
I think they're justifying bringing in a wizard with the Harfoots, and I think they're justifying the Harfoots by bringing in a wizard.
And it's another
you know what I mean?
God, but that one's like, the Valar sent him there.
Yeah, it's like, even though that's not how it happens in the books, like I think it does work for the show. Really, my main complaint with the Harfoot storyline is not with the storyline. It's really just the names that the Harfoots have.
Like what?
Like Eleanor Brandyfoot would never be Nori's name at that time. It's not that big a deal.
Did they not know what the Eleanor flower was?
No, they wouldn't have known that. Yeah, they would never have known that. Sam names his daughter Eleanor, and that's a big deal because no hobbit's ever been named that, even though almost every female hobbit or Harfoot, it seems like, is named after a flower, which is a beautiful tradition. I really like that, actually.
But I mean, we'll stick with Nori.
Yeah, we'll just call her Nori. That's fine. That's
yeah.
what she goes by. I do enjoy the storyline. I think it is really
Sadok is
compelling.
Really charming. The cultist thing is weird, but I didn't mind it as a and we haven't really run into them yet. But
that's really all they were. Yeah, we haven't. Oh yeah, we haven't seen the cultists at all in the first 4 episodes, which I think I will say that does lend one of the big criticisms that I have of this show, and I think a lot of people have. And it's not as evident in the first 4 episodes, but the 4th episode is where you start to see this, the pacing.
Yeah, it does ramp up quite significantly.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get there when we get there, but the last episode, like, they really cram a lot into that last episode that could have been spread out a little bit more.
I get introducing the characters and arcs and everything slowly, but yeah.
Well, it almost seems like they treated this first season, I don't want to say they treated it as a throwaway, but it did seem like it was like, okay, here's just like what's gonna happen. Here's like the intro to everything as the entire first season. And it was a little, they could have gotten into the story a little bit quicker. Like they did a lot of building when they could have just kind of started the story and, I don't know.
Well, to
the pacing, I feel
bust
like
in, I've got 2 scenes that to bust in some positivity here. One is just to circle back. I forgot about this, but the scene where Galadriel is sailing into Amman is so just so cool. With the birds and the singing is just so like it's just beautiful.
Yeah. It is. There's some really great things happening there. Also, related to the Numenor storyline, that scene where Galadriel and Elendil ride to the Hall of Lore is
it is
gorgeous. Like with her dress, the way it's flowing and everything, it's incredible. It's just beautifully shot. It really, really is. And I think it's the only time in the entire first season where we see Galadriel actually smile and enjoy herself.
But
it's like the rest of it, she's just frowning, and then she's like, the horsies. It's like, oh, look, she does actually smile. That's nice to see.
Yeah, so I figured, I forgot I had that earlier, but just quickly back to the Hobbits. I don't know if this is positive or negative, but when Nori's dad breaks his ankle is one of the most fucking brutal.
Oh my god, no, it's a brutal ankle break. It's like, oh god, the sound effect of seeing it turn sideways. Man,
really?
Yeah, you felt his pain in that episode, especially if anybody out there, have you ever broken your ankle?
My ankle 3 times or 4 times. Never broken it.
Yeah, I've had many. I ran cross country in high school, so I had a lot of sprained ankles, but I did break it once, and it was very minor. But it's still scarring. It sucks.
Oh man,
yeah. I was very much reminded watching that scene when his ankle turns and just going like, "Ooh, yeah, I remember that."
All right. So after that, after me just injecting some positivity here, well, I guess we could stay positive if you want to talk about Numenor, because
I do have one of the things I loved. One of the scenes I loved is when Elendil is talking to Miriel, and they have like that scene where they just do a little word nerdery on his name. About she asks, what does Elendil mean? And he says, oh, one who loves the stars. And then she goes, well, it has another translation, doesn't it? And he goes, yes, elf friend. And the political implications of that, I thought was really, really cool. And just the word nerdery about it was really fun. I love that. Yeah, that was very, very on brand for a Tolkien adaptation.
For Tolkien adaptation for the Numenorians who are starting to really resent elves and everything.
Right.
I mean, well, first of all, the establishing shots of Numenor, like I said before, are just
God damn, they're so good.
And that city is just so, it really evokes, like a lot of the visuals and stuff in Numenor, it evokes the precursor to Gondor that we see later, which I really liked.
Yeah. With
statues
the White City and everything, and the giant statues. Yeah, absolutely. I also Muriel's premonition of the wave coming is also Oh yeah, I got chills watching that massive tidal wave about to absolutely completely destroy. It was so visually just effective. It was just really effective. It's like that was one of those. There weren't many moments in this first season that I felt like I was transported there, but I will say that scene is one of the very few times where I felt like I was
immersive.
There, and how horrifying that would be.
God,
just seeing your entire island is about to be underwater.
That was maybe one of my favorite scenes in the entire show. Also, because that is much more in the spirit of Tolkien, I think.
Yes, telling you this is going to happen and then showing you how you get there. Yeah.
There's no mystery about it. I guess the mystery is something that would be that is in line with the mystery that Tolkien has in his story of like
could they do something to stop this?
It's
and the answer is yes, they could have. And spoiler alert, they don't. Because the story doesn't move forward if they fix everything.
That would be, as much as I'd love to see an Eternal Numenor, that would be the most egregious. It would just be them dancing on Tolkien's grave, and I would not approve.
That would be a change too far, I think, for anybody. It's like Numenor.
I think this podcast is us doing sort of a jig with Tolkien's ghost, but we're not trying to disrespect the man resting.
Yeah, we might be disrespectful, but we're not trying to be disrespectful. We're just trying to make ourselves laugh. We haven't really touched much on the Southlands storyline, and there's a few things that I want to mention that I thought were really interesting. This was
I just want to mention. I thought Elendil and Isildur were, especially Elendil, was just so. His character was awesome.
I lost his name. Where is it? Lloyd Owen. Lloyd Owen is the actor who plays Elendil, and man, does that son of a bitch have gravitas or what? I mean, his voice alone, but just like everything about his presentation, I'm like,
you could tell he's a captain, and he could easily be a king.
Yes, I mean, he's like, oh yeah, no, the guy with the voice like that, I'd follow him. Yeah, absolutely.
So I did want to.
Well, when Galadriel. Yeah. Well, I also liked his little joke when Galadriel's saying that she believes that Halbrand is like the king of the Southlands, and Muriel's like, yeah, and then and Elendil here is a runic emperor, and he's just like just a petty lord actually, and he smiles at his little joke, and Muriel just like stares daggers at him. I loved that. I thought that was very funny. I really enjoyed that. That one. That little bit just like lives in my head. I don't know why, but I just love that little bit.
That once again felt like Tolkien's humor, where it's like it was like Aragorn, like where he's most of the time he's grave and has that gravitas, and but
grim,
has those
also
moments
very grim, but he has his moments of
subversive.
It's like he'll laugh or make a joke, and it's like, oh yeah, there he is. There's Strider that we all know and love.
This is a real man. So anyway, the Southlands.
A few of the things I found really interesting and compelling, I say, in the Southlands storyline was the Southlanders' resentment and distrust of like the elvish occupation of their homes and the racism of the elves towards the Southlanders. Like there's that scene where Arondir is standing at the top of that of that tower, and he's chatting with his commander as they've been told that like they're being sent home. And the elf commander is like, we're not here because of what they did. It's because of who they still are. And like, I just found that there's a very compelling aspect to it of like, there's like this racism from the elves towards the men, and the elves and the men being, I think it's fair for them to feel resentful that they're being occupied because of something their ancestors did, thousands of years earlier. It's understandable, but like obviously, like some of them
it's another conflict of the immortality versus mortality thing too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like Arondir had been stationed there for 75 years, so like no one he met was born even when he first was stationed there. Like I think that's really interesting. I thought that was a good detail to put in. to the show. I at least found that very compelling.
Yeah, Arondir in general is one of my favorite characters. He's one of the most elf-like elves.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. He's wonderful. I like that character a lot. I really do.
The whole
and I also like how they. Sorry, go ahead. I think you're about to talk about what I was about to say. Go ahead.
And Bronwyn.
The love story, yeah. But I also like how they're keeping the love story moving very, very slowly. Like they really haven't done very much. Did they even kiss? I think they kissed like once in the whole
they kissed
first season.
Towards the end. But as much as I don't like that they keep like they just have to. They can't stay away from the forbidden love thing, and obviously it's not as bad as the Hobbits sort of dwarf elf love story.
Oh, in the Hobbit movies,
yeah.
That one like went way over the line because it's just not something that ever happened. But like an elf-human relationships, like, and they point out in the first episode, like it never ends well when this happens.
Yeah.
So at least true. Like it felt at least they understood that they were working with something very tricky.
Yeah, and they certainly gave it a lot more respect than. And I like the story itself, removed from whether or not this should be there at all, because of the writings and stuff. I think I thought it was well done and it's compelling and everything. And I like Bronwyn a lot.
Yeah, she's a good character, and I will say there's obviously plenty of like racist pushback on the show, like, oh, why are there people being mad about there just being people of color at all in Middle Earth, which is like, who cares? Shut up. That's not
whatever.
It's like, unless someone's skin tone is vital to who that character is, it's not important as far as I'm concerned. Like, I have no problem with that. And I think there's a lot of pushback against there being so many strong female leads in this show because it's not something you see in a lot of the writings.
Yeah, but they're all well written, which is the thing
I think they're good.
That bothers me is when people will sort of shoehorn a woman into a role
just to do it,
and then they just write them as like a strong man, and it's like, I mean,
Bronwyn, they just write a male character for a woman.
Bronwyn is a perfect example. She's not like some godlike fighter or anything, because it wouldn't make any sense. She's just like, she's a
doctor. Yeah, she's a leech. She practices leechcraft, to use an anachronistic term.
But she's strong and strong-willed, and she's doing anything to protect her son and her people and everything, which is that is what makes a strong character. Yeah, and not so, like Galadriel is. She's an elf, so it makes sense that she's this, has this martial prowess and all that. But
they have a lot of time to train.
Yeah, any elf is going to be.
Plus, they're naturally stronger and faster than mortals.
Yeah,
for the most part.
But
that does bring me to one thing that a lot of people don't love, and I don't love also, is like the physics bending. Like the idea that elves can do things that humans can't, sure, but they're also doing things that just violate the laws of physics.
Yeah, the whole with Arondir in the pit and everything.
When he like runs up the chain to like knock down the tent to expose the orcs to the light.
Yeah, my note was elven antics are still goofy.
And like that's the fight scene with like the snow troll where Galadriel like gets flipped off of the other elf's sword to jump in the air. It's like, I like the fight scene except for that.
Yeah, it's the
physics bending I don't like.
It just isn't.
Well, you don't
necessary.
need it. Like the elves are fast and strong, and they're very capable fighters. So like, I don't think you need to have like this
them doing acrobatics and stuff.
I mean, some acrobatics would be okay, but it's where it gets silly, it kind of takes you out of it. Like when Legolas in the Two Towers like skateboards down the stairs while
she surfs down the
Momokil's
trunk.
15.
Yeah,
it's like, it's cool, sure, visually, I guess, but it's like, it also kind of, in my experience, it kind of takes me out of it a little bit because it's so what?
Yeah, we my friends and I, when we were young, we coined the term glory hog moves. So we call it a GHM.
I like that.
Yeah, for
going
Legolas,
Hogwarts.
yeah. Because it's just like, did you need to like? I mean, climbing up the Mumak was cool. Obviously, you couldn't shoot through the back of its skull like that and kill it with
No,
arrows.
I mean, a real elephant's hide is like 2 inches thick, and a mumuk would have
Just
it's twice the
ridiculous,
size of an
yeah.
African elephant, so it would have like 4 inch thick skin probably.
And in the ambush in
Yeah.
Athelion, they even said that the arrows were just bouncing off of its hide. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So
anyway,
let's get
back to the
Rings
Rings
of
of Power.
Yeah.
So I guess while we're in that pit, we might as well talk about the quote unquote warg.
Yeah, the Chihuahua, as I've heard it called, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, the CGI on that was really
It was the
really
eyes.
looked cartoony. The eyes in particular, yeah.
They had an awesome looking creepy wolf stalking the Harfoots earlier,
but it had tusks, and that's one of the things I've had a big complaint about, even in the Jackson movies. Like, the wargs are evil wolves; they're not a different animal. So changing them up a little bit from a regular wolf to indicate that they're particularly evil is okay. But yeah, they added tusks to and like horns to the wargs, and the Chihuahua warg
just give them teeth that are protruding like a crocodile or something. You don't need to add
stuff. It doesn't. I didn't. Yeah, I don't love the design of those. Like, just make them big, scarier looking wolves. Like, that's
what they
scary.
are.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are. So just like, they get a little creative when they don't really need to.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's something that I just personally didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it just took you out. So like, yeah. So I mean, the Rondir's master just gets killed moments later, right? And you're like,
yeah,
wow, that would be really emotional if I didn't just see that weird giant poodle.
Kind of undercut the sadness of that. And when he like cuts down the tree and everything. Oh wait, no, that happened before, right? No, that happened after. He cuts down the tree after that fight.
Yeah, I believe so.
Or does he? Maybe he does.
He uses the axe to cut the thing down. Yeah, no, the whole thing was emotional, and then it just felt like in the middle you're just so taken out of it.
Undercut by this goofy eyes on that on that warg. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, one of the because we want to keep it positive as well.
Yes.
One of the things I really thought they did very well with some of the expressions that are used are very indicative of the various cultures. You know, like C is always right with Numenor, or when Nori's father, I think after he breaks his ankle, he's talking about when he meets his current wife, when his other wife had died, and he said that he felt like his let's see, I wrote it down, that his wheels broke out from under him. You know, the idea that they're nomadic people and they're on wheels. So I thought those were really good little things that just gave depth and a sense of reality to each of the cultures. I thought that was really
it's
cool.
A very Tolkien.
Or the dwarves, there can be no peace between the hammer and the anvil.
Yes, the dwarves have a lot of rock, good ones.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
I thought those were really good touches that deepened like your understanding of these individual cultures and showed that what they value and that sort of thing. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, and it's Tolkien obviously used language to, for a lot of things in the story, but he did the same thing, where it was, especially with the hobbits for him, where he just all of these sayings and colloquialisms just really help flesh out a culture,
Yeah, I agree with you.
Is there
I think we could.
Yeah, is there anything else?
I was going to say, do you have any predictions based on the first 4 episodes?
As far as like the next season?
Yeah, I thought of a couple things.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So one of my predictions is that Elendil's daughter, which is a made-up character for the series, Eowyn, I think she is going to end up either wittingly or unwittingly creating or designing, because we know she's an
she's
architect
an
in the
engineer,
architect's
so
guild or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah, she's an apprentice. My guess is that she's going to either wittingly or unwittingly design the temple to Sauron.
Okay.
That's one of my predictions for something we might see at some point. Corey Olson thinks she's going to become the Tolkien professor. Corey Olson thinks she's going to become the cutest Nazgul, as he says. Which I don't know about that, but I do think she's going to end up being the one who designs the temple to
I think
Sauron.
she's definitely gonna. I think she's there to sort of create a schism in their family. Yeah, I think they might go to the west.
Oh yeah,
the
definitely.
Other city.
We might see that. We could see it in the second season, but maybe not. We'll see. But the faithful that are on Numenor are on the west side of the island, where we know Anarion. Is that the other son of Elendil?
I believe so.
And Anarion.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know he's there. That he's on the west coast of Numenor, and that Isildur wants to go there. They've established that. So we might see some of that at some point. We hope we meet him soon.
Yeah,
because I think that's an interesting dynamic in the family.
Isildur was Arnor and Anarion was Gondor, or was it the other way around?
Well, isn't Anarion is he killed in the Battle of the Last Alliance? I can't remember, honestly. I feel like he gets killed.
But they established the kingdoms before the Last Alliance.
Yeah, that's true. Right, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I believe.
I think you're right.
Yeah, Isildur, right. Well, I guess this is spoilers for later in the show, but it does happen in the books. Isildur founds Arnor in the north and Anarion founds Gondor in the south. So
I think you're right, yeah.
They end up being the two kings. And I don't. I guess the kingdoms are united, but they're just sort of. It just makes sense to have two kings because it's a huge.
It's a big landmass.
Yeah,
it's the entire west of Middle Earth that they're.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna start seeing more colonialism from Numenor,
yeah,
in general.
Absolutely. Well, Pharazôn starts talking about that at the end of I think at the end of this first season.
Yeah. So
get tributaries in Middle Earth and everything and make Numenor great again or whatever. Yeah.
It's hard to make predictions based on the first 4 episodes, but
yeah, it is. Although I will say one of the things I did think another thing I thought of, I think Theo will end up becoming a Nazgul. I think he's going to end up getting one of the rings for men.
Theo?
Yeah. I think that's gonna be a heartbreaking turn for him as well.
I can see that.
It's a guess, but
he was already tempted by this weird sword key thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Which we'll talk about that, I guess, because it's not really relevant until
it becomes more relevant, I think, in the next episode, in episode 5. Yeah.
Honestly, most of the story stuff, we're mostly only talking about the cultures and intros and stuff, because that's all there really was in the first 4 episodes.
Yeah, there wasn't a ton of. The whole first season's kind of set up, but the first 4 episodes, in particularly, were a setup to just introduce all of these.
I guess is why I liked the first 4 episodes more in some ways.
I gotta say, yeah, going through it, I said this to you yesterday that going through it after watching it already, I did have a far more enjoyable experience because I knew what to expect. So I was able to. I think one of the big challenges you've said this as well, and I think this is a big challenge for a lot of Tolkien geeks like us who watch the show. That it's difficult to watch it just as a show.
Yes. It's hard to not marry it to the lore.
Yeah, until these most recent viewings, I haven't been able to watch it just as a show. I've only watched it as a Tolkien geek. And so I've been really trying very hard to be more objective. And I did enjoy myself a lot more this most recent time around because I already knew what to expect for the things that bothered me. And I knew what to expect for things that I liked, so I was able to just kind of be a little more objective.
Yeah.
Not even objective. I was just able to enjoy the process a little bit more without like worrying about it. Like I was worried
Yeah.
the entire time I watched every episode.
Yeah, that's true. There's like some anxiety about how's this gonna go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody was waiting for something.
Yeah,
There was
I
always going to
mean,
be stuff that's going to upset people. Like you're not going to please everybody. You just like
no.
it's never going to happen. But yeah, I think a lot of us were like watching with like one eye shut, like, ooh, what's going to happen? What are they going to say that's going to be really like, ugh,
Yeah. I think it comes back to what I said earlier about just I want to be able to watch this show, and I think it's why it's hard to rewatch it. I had really not much desire to rewatch it until we, said we were
Decided
to
to do
this
this. Yeah.
episode, and it I want for Tolkien, I want to just enjoy the journey of the show
Yes.
and not and
Yeah.
after all the mysteries are resolved, most of them were, I think.
I don't think they're going to do much more mystery box stuff. I seriously
I
hope they
hope
don't,
not.
because again, I think ended up being distracting.
Yeah, but after that stuff is out of the way, it's like, I mean, and yeah, like you said, there were many parts I enjoyed, and it's because it was just satisfying to see certain things. It was satisfying
Yeah.
to see Numenor in its
Yeah.
glory. It was satisfying to see,
Khazad-dûm
yeah,
and yeah.
Khazad-dûm, see the hobbits being
Yeah,
peaceful and
Lindon was really cool, and
yeah,
Eregion looked really cool. And
yeah. So
yeah,
overall, I think visually the show is pretty much
yeah,
a
the sets, the
triumph.
costumes are
Besides the occasional CG goofiness,
yeah a little funky, but overall visually, I think is one of the few
that
things
is
that
that is
you
almost
have a hard time
flawless.
convincing me that you're angry about it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like if you're angry about, I don't know. I think some things I understand not liking something as a taste thing, but I wouldn't
oh
say
yeah,
that you know, I wouldn't say they failed, certainly.
yeah. No,
Um,
I think visually is one of the visually it's very successful. I would argue.
and the acting was pretty much great across the board, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, some of the writing was a little.
And that's why I
There
always have a hard time
was
judging acting
yeah. I mean,
in something
if you
like
have a
this.
bad line, it's just kind of like it
How
doesn't
do you
matter. You
deliver
could
that?
be yeah, you could be freaking, you could be Marlon Brando, but if it's a goofy line, like even he's not going to be able to sell it
Yeah.
that well. Like it'll still end up being like, what? Really? That's a
I
line they wrote for that character?
I hate sand. It's coarse, it's rough, it's irritating, it gets everywhere. It's like
Oh
that's
my God.
poor Hayden. That's never gonna sound good.
No, that was God, terrible writing. Like, man, Star Wars, man.
Let's not open
Like
that
that's him. It's like
rabbit
that's him
hole.
flirting. Are you out of your mind? Why would you think that was a good line to write? Come on.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, the memes have taken care of all that
yeah,
pretty
no,
well, so
that
we don't
it
have
just made
to.
it made the prequels enjoyable again after all the memes. But yeah, no, once again,
Yeah, yeah.
so the writing, I don't know, like I don't think the
Some of it is really
micro
good.
stuff was bad. Like I don't think a lot of
Yeah,
much of the dialogue and stuff was bad. It was just the
yeah,
overarching stories were hit or miss, I think.
yeah. I agree with you. Yeah, it's
Um
a mixed bag. I think that's a very
yeah,
fair way to
yeah.
say it. Like, there's been a very mixed bag.
Yeah, like I didn't
I will say overall though, I've enjoyed it. Like
I have
for as many things that have made me, upset with the liberties taken with the lore and some of the weird stuff, especially that happens in the second four episodes. So yeah, the
yeah.
second half of the season is where I think the really offensive lore changes come.
Yeah, and
But
we'll obviously get into that. But
yeah,
I think my overall verdict, or at least what's indicative of it, is I didn't want to rewatch this, and it's because I think primarily of all those like mystery things going on,
yeah,
and it just sort of spoils rewatchability. Like, how many times would you like
right, yeah,
realistically rewatch like Lost or something, some mystery show like that? Like, there's just
yeah,
no like once you know that's like most of the tension and everything in the show, and but
right,
I
yeah.
am excited for the second season.
I am too. I will say, and my prediction is if they don't, there's so much more pressure, I would argue, on the second season even than there was on the first.
Yeah.
Because if this second season is not a runaway success, they might not make any more of this show. I mean, because people like to say that they invested $1 billion. They haven't invested $1 billion yet. The whole series is expected overall, with purchasing of the rights and the production, is going to be $1 billion. But they haven't
only
spent
a couple $100 million. Yeah. No, but so it is at risk, I would say. And I would, as much as there are things I do and don't like about it, I don't care what whether you like this show or not, obviously, whatever. You're entitled to your opinion, but I think I don't want to speak for everybody, I guess, but I think most of us would like to see more adaptations of Tolkien, and just to keep Tolkien in the zeitgeist, and this show does that.
Yeah, it can only bring people into the world. Like, no one's going to be like, oh, I was going to read the books, but I didn't like this show, so I won't do that. Because it's like, if you didn't like the show, that's a good reason to read the books, because then you're getting the original story.
Yeah.
So I think it can only do good for the fandom as a whole.
Yeah.
To expand it. Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody at work, and they were saying that they had never, I don't think he'd ever even seen the Peter Jackson trilogy, but he watched Rings of Power.
That's so weird.
I mean, he's younger, like there are people alive who, they were born after
those films already came out. Yeah.
There were human adults who were born after those movies came out.
Yeah, it's so wild. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, it's like, because it doesn't feel like it was really that long ago,
No, but that's because those movies hold up so well, and I guess that's why. I guess that's the ultimate disappointment of this show, and I guess why it's so difficult to live up to that is, like, we expect, we might not expect that it is as great as the film trilogy was.
Yeah.
But, I want something like that where I can go back and rewatch it. I could just have it on in the background while I'm doing other stuff, just because I want to be
there. Yeah.
Want to be in this world. And, like, as of now, I don't have that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I was never at any point really grabbed and felt like I was there or wanted to be there. It felt like I was watching it and that I wasn't a part of it. And to be fair, that might not be a fair standard, because I was very preteen when I first saw Fellowship of the Ring. So
yeah, and
it's like, so it's a different age. So
and Tolkien spent how many years writing these books and creating this world?
If he had lived another 10 years, like, Lord of the Rings would probably be a different book. Like, there would have been more editions with changes in them. Like, I'm certain of that, because Tolkien, like, he never
really
settled on anything permanently. Yeah, he was always like, retconning things and changing. Like, he never settled for sure on, like, where the orcs came from. I mean, it's Twisted Elves is the version that's in the Silmarillion, so that's what we generally go with as fans. But he wasn't totally comfortable with that, because he wasn't comfortable with the idea that there's any living thing that can't be redeemed, that's completely irredeemable. He wasn't very comfortable with that idea, because it doesn't jive with his worldview. So it's it would have always been changing.
That reminds me, we didn't even see Adar, really. So I guess there's not that much to talk about with the orcs. We mentioned we don't stuff.
Yeah, we still don't even know who Adar really is yet. Other than, like, I mean,
scary.
They do him. Yeah, he is scary. I mean, it makes me sad that that actor, Joseph Malway, I think is his name, is not coming back for the second
He
season
was
because I think
great.
he did a really great job with that character. I'm very excited to rewatch that like interrogation scene in the barn.
Yeah, there are a few
Um,
scenes I am looking forward to rewatching.
yeah,
So a few I'm not, but
yeah. Anyway, we got to
oh
wrap this up. This is
yeah,
almost 2 hours long.
yeah. Hang on. Before that, I did naturally at the end. I did want to circle back and talk about the intro to the show, the opening credits.
Oh, like the credits?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
really cool.
is so cool. I don't know if you
Yeah.
the so it that those opening credits are practical effects. I mean, they're like
Some of
enhanced
them,
by
yeah,
CG,
yeah,
but
but overall,
the
it's a
most
practical
of
effect.
the patterns and stuff, I don't think the trees are probably natural, but
No, like they may have formed them and then turned on like the speakers underneath that platform. It's
yeah,
basically so it's sand on this like black you know uh surface, and underneath them are speakers that are pumping sound waves to move the sand around in interesting shapes,
yeah,
which is really cool.
it's called cymatics, which
Yes, thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was a really interesting and just beautiful, sort of like simple way to intro the show, and the music was
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. The great Howard Shore wrote the theme music for the show, which is great. I mean, I really like what Bear McCready's done music wise with it, but it was cool to have Howard Shore do that, do the actual theme for the show.
yeah.
And what I like about the intro too is the idea of sound moving things.
Yes,
It
as
just it jives with like the universe being created with a music, and
yeah.
yeah, I just thought it was is really cool. It
And
was very very.
there's a lot of imagery sort of evoking the Annalindale, which is, if you remember
Yeah,
the that creation
the
story.
music of the Idor. Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I guess just real quick with the music, I guess I liked it, and it never felt out of place. It felt like it was inspiring and stuff emotionally, but it's just not. Once again, it just doesn't measure up to the score from Lord of the Rings for me. There just
Agreed.
isn't
Yeah.
the
Like you can hum concerning hobbits in your head. You can hum the main fellowship theme in your head,
yeah.
like
It's not as
there's
memorable
not as much
or
of that.
recognizable.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
part of that might be because it's a show and it
Yeah.
takes more of a backseat, but like
Yeah, there's a lot of like reoccurring musical themes that happen that connect the music together, but there isn't
yeah,
yeah,
I
I agree.
couldn't
There's,
hum a single
yeah.
one of them now, and it
Yes.
might be
I
because I
with
don't want to rewatch it.
yeah.
But
Well, there is one exception I would say to that, which was not in this first 4 episodes, but Poppy's walking song.
oh yes, that was
I
catchy.
love that song. I thought that was a really, really great song. I felt it was both corny to have like not all those who wonder and wander are lost. It was like a little corny, but I also
Yeah,
loved it.
and that was also in line with Tolkien and stuff. But once again, that's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
really.
that poem Bilbo wrote about Aragorn. Yeah,
I mean,
but
they wrote a memorable poem, but not the theme music
yeah,
still to me is
yeah, I agree with you.
could
I
be
agree with you.
more recognizable and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, I hear you.
All right, so
We got to bring this episode to a close. It's going to be such a long episode.
yeah, well, we had to expect that, and I don't even think
We
we
planned on
gave
it, but
everything its due. We
no,
had to jump
definitely not.
around.
Yeah.
So
Okay, we'll cover all the other stuff in part two of our Rings of Power episode.
yeah. Oh, you know what? I think we totally forgot is correction corner.
Oh, we sure did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
we'll end
before
the
we
episode.
before we do the Tolkien fun fact for the week, I just gotta bring a slight correction about the fun fact from last week.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I said that Tolkien drank gin, lined up 3 shots every morning. Um, Turns out, you know, maybe he did. I don't think he did though. He did like to
For
drink. he did like whiskey, but I think he usually had his whiskey in the evening. I think he was more likely.
I would imagine.
I think it's more.
Yeah, it's hard to write. It's hard to write the Oxford English Dictionary when you're shit faced.
Well, yeah, tell that to Hunter S. Thompson.
A dictionary, though, he did not write.
Certainly not.
He wrote that he was completely stoned and drunk the entire time he did everything.
Yeah, I don't think Tolkien really dabbled that much in stories of vice, but
yeah, he did not.
But yeah, he was probably more likely just lining up 3 shots of tea every morning, like every other good good Brit.
Yeah, like a good Englishman. Yeah.
So I guess with me having corrected that fun fact, I guess that disallows me from coming up with. I mean, having researched thoroughly and presenting.
It's my turn to make an ass of myself.
Yes, it's your turn, sir. Let's hear it.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, today's Tolkien fun fact that we'll correct next episode. Will be. Sorry, no, you didn't hear that. I didn't say that.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, so today's Tolkien fun fact. It is a 100% true fact that Tolkien, before he went off to war, was actually a plumber by trade. That was his first job.
A plumber.
He was Yep, that's 100% true. He was a plumber, and he actually had to do battle with a couple like tortoises and mushrooms, and he had a really hard time of it, which is why he became a writer.
Oh my God.
Nope. Stop it, Sean. It's a true fact.
You got me. You got me with that one. I could not see where that was going.
You know what the best part is? I didn't know where it was going, and
you improvised. Well,
I mean, I didn't improvise. It's a true fact that I read on Wikipedia.
Oh yeah, you just had forgotten the second half and you just kept reading. Oh yes. Yeah, that one gets me every time too.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well,
we got to end this someday.
Yeah, we gotta wrap up our Rings of Power. Rings of Chowder.
Yeah. So thank you for listening to episode 1 of or part 1 of our Rings of Chowder wrap up. A Rings of Chowder reliving Rings of Power post production. Lord of Wrongs of Power.
Yeah, it's rigged.
Anyway.
All right.
If you'd like to write into the podcast and make some complaints or give us praise or just have a question that you'd like for us to make an ass of ourselves answering, please send those along at to the Lord of the Wrongs podcast at gmail.com. And we hope you listen in next time. Sorry for the long episode, guys.
You don't have to be sorry. They love it.
Yeah, I definitely love it.
All right.
Anyway,
with that,
join us next time. And with that, we say Namarie.
Namarie.